Good evening and welcome to another edition of Down to the Wire. I'm your host, derbiologist, and joining me again this week is Capping with Candice. Candice here. Candice, this week we decided to take some turf races and a look at the 3-year-old filly sprinting. Let's start off with the Raven Run, which is going to be at Keeneland this year. And the last couple of years it got full fields because of the poly, but this year, we didn't get I think there's been some talk that maybe the 3-year-old filly routing division hasn't been that competitive, but I thought we got a great lineup of horses here, a full field, and really the top-notch sprinters, and now we get to see them at a distance that is good at 7 furlongs, kind of matches up some of the sprinters with some of the routers coming back.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. That seems like we got everyone who you'd expect from this division, and I agree that I like the distance as well for some of the same reasons that you said. 7 furlongs is kind of that good in-between mark for some of the sprinters stretching out, and then some of the routers kind of cutting back. I found this race really interesting. If you're against the favorite here, then it becomes a really, really great betting race. And, for me, I found, several horses in here that I think are going to go off at decent prices that have a big chance. When I first looked at this race, one of the horses who stood out to me is Pirate's Trove. This is a horse who, to the stage, she's only ran on the poly. The very lately race only ran 3 times, and she won all 3 of those starts. She's by Speightstown, and she has a couple half-siblings who have run on the dirt. Seems like kind of the better quality half-siblings of hers have been able to win on the dirt, so I don't think that, the dirt should be an issue for her based on her breeding. All she does is win to this point. It's worth noting that her maiden one was over a very speed-biased track, but she won by 12 lengths, so hard to kind of say she wouldn't have won in either way. 7 furlongs seems to be no problem. She's won over this distance before. And I honestly think that the pace of this race really sets up well for her. You look at Terrace, Misbehavior, potentially some of the horses on the outside could potentially move forward as well, being that we have a full field here. So I think that, if she can sit just behind the pace, which I think she's fully capable of doing, behind potentially, Sweet Whiskey and Misbehavior and Taris, then she could really get the run of the race here. So Pirate's Trove is one. First-time dirt really is intriguing to me in this race. Another one who's really interesting is Divided Attention. This is a gal who, made a comeback off of a very long layoff back in August and was very visually impressive in there, made a big move on the outside and just kind of ran away with it. So she's going to be one who's interesting now coming back after a little bit of a break still, about 56 days off, but she was just so visually impressive last time out, beating Shea Jolie, who comes back here in this race as well. And that race of hers that she won came back pretty live, too. A couple winners came out of that race. So Divided Attention, I think, is another one who you're going to get a decent price on, who has every chance in this race. And the last one who I really was looking at here is La Madrina. This is the chap at Have to Be Rosano. She's one who takes money every single time she runs, purely for that reason, I think. But one thing I like about her is they've been very, very patient with her. And I think that, every time she runs, I look at her as being very well meant and always running an honest race. So for me, Pirates, Trove, Divided Attention, and La Madrina are 3 who I think, you're going to get decent prices, maybe 5 to 1 plus, and who all have a really good chance in here.
Couple of notes I wanted to talk about. The morning line favorite is the Thank You, Mary Lou, and that horse, I think a lot of expectations. It won a couple of races last year as a juvenile, and the last race was interesting because it won by 6, and there's 2 ways you can look at it. One, it finally came around back to that form that it showed, first race of the year at Gulfstream, or 2, it was the class drop. I mean, this horse had ran 3 grade 1s, and then boom, a grade 3. It's not a coincidence it wins by 6 lengths. What's your take? Do you think it was the class drop, or do you think she's rounding back into form? If you think it was the class drop, she may not be that live here.
I definitely think it was the class drop. It just came kind of out of nowhere, and she's one that I just think she was a precocious type, and people came to expect a lot out of her, and then she just didn't really improve off of that. So I'm happy to take her on here.
Terrace is a horse that I ended up liking a lot. Normally I don't like a horse like this, It's ran at Aqueduct and Laurel and Oaklawn Park, but some of its speed figures are pretty high. And anytime, that last race at Presque Isle, just a 108.2. I think its morning line is 8-1, but I think people are going to ignore the Laurel. They're going to see the Aqueduct. They're going to see Clinton Potts. I think this horse is going to float up because I think horses, like you say, La Madrina are going to take money and a couple other horses. So I think Terrace is going to be about 12-1. Not sure she's going to win. I'm picking her on top, but I think she's the type of horse that's very usable in first, second, and third. Another horse that I think is the perfect cutback horse is Cassatt. Gets exactly what you want. Grade 1, cuts back to 7 furlongs. You know she's going to be running at the end. Again, 10-1 morning line. I have a feeling she's going to be bet down lower than that. She was 9-1 against Untappable in the last race in Sweet Reason. So, but on the other hand, you can't just throw her out because she smoked the field by 4 lengths at 5 furlongs, and then she went straight into a grade 3 and won by 3, and now she gets the class drop. So I think the betting could go a lot of directions here.
Yeah, I'm glad that you mentioned Cassatt. She was one who I gave a long, hard look to myself. I know she's on the class drop. I'm just not sure she's quite fast enough for these. I know that she's well fancied. She has a lot of fans. A lot of people really like her. She's gorgeous to look at. I'm just not convinced that she's fast enough to compete with these. If she's anywhere near her morning line price, I think she's worth it. But like you said, I expect her to take a lot of betting. She seems to be a pretty popular horse. And if I remember right, I think that she was acting up a little bit before that race with Untappable. So you can kind of look at that two ways. You can think, okay, will she improve off that effort because she was acting up a little bit there? Or maybe that's just kind of her, and maybe she's a little more tappet than we thought.
Well, I think it factors into the fifth place finish in the last race. Plus, she actually went after JoJo Warrior and Untappable, so I at least give her that effort. I mean, if she wins, it's the perfect cutback angle that everybody says, oh, the cutback and the class drop. If she doesn't win, she'll still run a good race. I mean, I didn't pick her on top, but she's better than quite a few horses in here, so, whether she runs second, third, fourth. I mean, I like her better than a few of these horses. Misbehavior, I'm not a big fan of at all. I think that's a horse that's going to be overbet. I can't take a Charlestown shipper seriously in a race like this. This is one of those races like the Test Stakes and a few other races that no matter what, at the beginning of the year, there literally are connections that want to win this race. And so that's why I don't like Misbehavior. I think this is an afterthought for them. And I think horses like La Madrina, Thank You, Mary Lou, Cassatt, they've been pointing for this race all year. It's one of those races at Keeneland, and there's just certain races that people want to win, and this is one of them. Any thoughts on Misbehavior? Or?
Yeah, I'm not a big fan as well for some of the same reasons that you said. I think that she's ran into a couple weak groups along the way, hasn't quite always gone against this quality, and maybe some of the times that she has gone against this quality, she's come up a little bit short. I mean, she's always kind of in the mix, so she's one who's definitely going to take money here, but I'm not so convinced this is even her best distance. I mean, I know she went at Charlestown over this distance against suspect quality horses, but I do think she's much better at 6.5 furlongs, so she's not one who I'd be including here. But it's a testament to how good a betting race this is that me and you have talked about our picks, and it's 5 different horses.
So, yeah, I think it's going to be a wide-open betting affair. I think toss-outs for me are Misbehavior, and I don't like Sweet Whiskey at all either. So I think Terrace and Cassatt are usable. I also like La Madrina, but she is going up in class. I just don't want to take too short of a price on her.
Yes, I agree with that with La Madrina. I do think she's very well meant, but yeah, so she's one who you have to keep an eye on the tote board just because she always takes money. I think her last 3 races, I think she's gone off at even odds. So yeah, you gotta kind of have to. You wouldn't want to take anything too short on her, even though I do think she's very well meant here. For me, I'm gonna go with Pirates Trove on top with the first time dirt, and then I'm going to take Divided Attention, who they've been very patient with, and I think is well meant here as well. Over La Madrina third, but great betting race.
Should be an exciting edition of the Ravens Run. And then Sunday we go north of the border, Woodbine. Woodbine has this traditional card where they bring on the near tick for sprinters. Then they have a distance race for the fillies, and then the Canadian International. They've kind of carded it a little bit differently this time around, but we're going to take them in order of handicapping preference. So we're going to start with the E.P. Taylor. And a lot of European shippers, and they usually do well in this race. Some of them I notice are doing Lasix, and some of them aren't.
Yeah, it seems to be a little bit of a theme in both races, as we'll see when we talk about the Canadian International as well. Your favorite here is Just the Judge. We've seen her once before when she ran over in the Beverly D at Arlington. I was there. She acted up a little bit in the paddock, but I think about 3/4 of that field acted up a bit in the paddock, including your winner. So she's interesting in the spot. If you go off straight form, that race has come back very, very live. We already know, the class of Euro Charlene, despite her having not run since then, of course, being injured. Stephanie's Kitten has, of course, come back to win. Latia, of course, came back and won just the other day. Sparkling Beam, who finished last in that race, has come back to win. I'm Already Sexy has come back to win. So that was a very live race that Just finished a very close third in. So I can see completely why she's favored here. She's one who I'm going to go against, though I'm not sure if this was totally the plan for her to originally come here, because she did ship back to England following the race at Arlington. She also is going up for sale in December, so I mean nothing that would totally sway me away, but just a lot of little red flags that make me not want to take her at a short price here, even though she probably is your most likely winner. I just kind of don't like the things that maybe running her here as an afterthought. So I think they want to run her here and then the filly mare trip and then put her in the sale. So I'm just not a fan of that plan, or if it even really was a plan in the first place. The horse who I'm really looking at here is Deceptive Vision. I was very impressed with her win last time out in the local prep for this race. I don't think that the extra distance should be any sort of concern for her. She made a big move in that race, and even though I think that she got, a pretty perfect trip, she's just been honest all year long, has always ran close, obviously loves it in Woodbine being a local horse. So Deceptive Vision is the one who I really, really like here. Another one who I quite like is Eyeful. She's at a little bit higher odds here. I'm not sure that she's so much a win threat, but, a horse that you could justify playing across the board, or maybe playing underneath Just the Judge or Deceptive Vision. Eyeful is kind of the type of horse who I look for when I bet a first-time European horse. She comes from France. She has a little bit muddied up form, but when you look at her, you see her wins have come over good ground. You see that, she definitely wants this distance. I think if you watch, the replay of her most recent race is on YouTube. If you watch the end of that race, you can see she definitely probably wants further. She's definitely one who wants firm ground. So Eyeful is one who, at a higher price, I could see, possibly outrunning her odds here and making a little bit of a splash.
Yeah, Eyeful has a lot of things to like. Fabry, the trainer's very well, does well with horses coming over to North America, and it's the Goldacova boys. Flavian Prat, he's kind of a jockey that's kind of interesting as well. And one of the things I like about Andre is he likes to test horses. Like there's certain trainers that, like they like to look for spots where they're going to be even money, and these guys, the Goldacova boys in general, and Andre, they tend to kind of reach for spots, which I kind of like that. So when they do win, you can get a little bit of a price on them because they're not always. I mean, there's just some trainers that if they're not 6-5, they won't run their horse. And so I think she has a little bit of potential. I ended up just going with Angel Terrace. I thought the horse has a few races. I like the running style in this race. Just the Judge, I think, is going to get overbet off what I think people perceive to be a live Beverly D. Not to say that it wasn't. I think they may start to factor in a little more than it really is, because I thought a lot of the horses that lost that race actually were better that day. I didn't like Euro Charlene at all. I thought she kind of just rode the rail, and I saw 2-3 more horses with trip troubles, and those horses all came back to win, like Stephanie's Kitten and Latia, and I thought Latia set really fast fractions that day. So I thought actually Euro Charlene was the 4th best horse in the race and won it, and I think it's proven that maybe some of the other horses actually had livelier races. So I think she's going to be overbet a little bit. I like Angel Terrace. I like Eyeful. Odalese, gets Ryan Moore, and I just think he's one of the few jockeys that you have to take a second look at a horse he's riding. This one, 124 pounds. I like the fact that they tried it in Ireland and Great Britain, and comes in. It's been bet down in a lot of races, so I think, if you're going to go 2-3 deep, I think you got to take at least a look at this horse.
For me too, one more note on Eyeful that I would say, if you're somebody who, like some people tend to just try to play straight form and things like that, I would really suggest watching the Prix Marchandors, a listed race at Maisons Lafite. You'll recognize a few horses in there. Marlborough Rose, who just won first time out in the United States for Clement up at Belmont, was in that race. And another horse, Dariabi, also debuts in the United States on Sunday. So, Eyeful, if potentially in this race, she might give you a sign of a couple other horses that we tend to have in the States right now. You don't often see a race where you have 3 or 4 horses who ran in it, and now they're running over here in the United States. I agree with you on Odalese. Interesting horse. Beat Just the Judge in her last race over at Epsom. And that horse that they lost to, Thistlebird, she retired, but she was very much in form at that time. Won a few races in a row, so that's not a bad loss by any means. She was one who, really was at the top of her game at that point.
That should be another good betting race, and I think really if Just the Judge loses, I think you're going to see the odds board is going to have kind of Just the Judge as the favorite, and then I think you'll see 4 or 5 horses between 4-1 and 7-1. So I don't think anybody's going to go long, but I do think as you get past that second and third favorite, if those horses start winning, it could bump up the pick 3s and pick 4s. Now the Canadian International, which, this race has a huge purse. It's got a lot of history, and, I think it's too bad because the Breeders' Cup takes a few horses away from this race, and then this race takes a few from the Breeders' Cup. The last couple of years, it's kind of just been Joshua Tree's stomping ground, but at least he's finally retired. So, you've got a couple of Woodbine horses, and then you get the Euro shippers. What are some of your overall thoughts? And, I think people forget, this is it's a big purse. It's $1 million race.
I think the first thing you have to look at in this race is pace. Reporting Star breaks from the outside. I think that's going to give you your pace right there, along with the Pizza Man breaking inside. I think the Pizza Man. So I think that you're going to get an honest pace here with those two kind of being near both ends of the starting stalls. For me, it's really, really hard for me to see past the shippers, past Brown Panther, past Hillstar. And at the end of the day, to me, if Brown Panther shows up and he's himself, he just wins. Like, it's not if, but how far.
I don't know. I'm the exact opposite. I think Hillstar is one of the better bets of the year. This has got everything I love. I absolutely think the best trainer in the world is Stout. He gets Ryan Moore. He comes off a win, and he's got back class, and he's in current form. And I think Hillstar's 3 lengths better than anybody else in this field if you're going to take the horse shipping over and in.
Oh, my goodness. Okay. Hillstar, for one, is not the type of horse I like coming over here. He's a big horse. The tracks that he tends to do well on are kind of the big free-ranging galloping horses. He doesn't seem to run as well on the tighter courses like you see in North America. Him and Brown Panther also faced each other this year. That was at Chester, over a little bit further. He was soundly beaten by Brown Panther, and to be honest, if the race was any shorter, he would have just lost by even further because he was catching ground late. Brown Panther, to me, has a lot more tactical speed than Hillstar. Hillstar definitely needs a solid pace to have any chance in here, whereas Brown Panther has, a little more room. He's won being raced forwardly. He's run being raced near the back or mid-pack. It doesn't matter so much to him as it does to Hillstar. Perhaps the one concern for Brown Panther is it's a little bit on the short side for him, but he's a versatile enough runner that I think he'll be okay. He definitely wants this ground. Both of them want this ground, that's for sure. I just think Brown Panther is a classier individual. I think he's running much better races this year. Hillstar's last race at Newberry was extremely weak. That is not I mean, that's a very poor Group 3 by any standards. There's a reason he was 11-4 in there, that's for sure. I just think Brown Panthers ran against tougher and ran against the horses at their ideal distances. So, for example, if you look at them, they both ran against Cavalryman, who's a nice horse in his own right, a nice stayer. And you'll see Hillstar ran to him much closer. But Brown Panther ran versus him at what would be his ideal distance. So those are things you have to take into account. I can see the appeal for Hillstar that people might have, seeing that he's getting LASIK, seeing that he's getting Ryan Moore. But to me, those are just going to be reasons that he's going to be overbet. I wouldn't be surprised in the slightest if Hillstar went off favored here. And I just think Brown Panther is a better horse.
What about the kitten horse? Sun Tracer got a win the last time, and then you've got the outside kitten horse, Big Blue Kitten.
I'm a big fan of Sun Tracer. We've talked about him before. I think this is a little bit of a reach for him. I wouldn't be surprised. I mean, I'm sure we'll see kind of his typical closing late. I just think that might be a little bit much for him. He's a nice horse, but maybe more of a Group 3 type horse, not necessarily of this Group 1 level. Big Blue Kitten is really tough for me. He's been disappointing this year. I really, really liked him last year. I liked him much more than Real Solution last year. And clearly he had issues, being that he came back so late in the year this year and was kind of behind the 8 ball. I just was really disappointed with his run last time out. He looked like he had every chance to win that race at one point and then just kind of faded off. And I couldn't take him off that effort, especially with an outside post.
Well, it was interesting with Big Blue Kitten. Right after that last race, they said they were going to go to the Breeders' Cup. Then they changed their plans. And so, you know me, I hate that when they change their plans. It never seems to work. I mean, I'm sure it has, but more often than not, when I write down changed plans, if they're underlays, you do eliminate a lot of horses, and especially at lower prices. If they're a longer price, I don't mind taking them, because at least then you're getting rewarded for the change in plan. But a lot of times they change plans and they go off at lower odds, and it wasn't even the race that they were meant to run in. So that does worry me. But on the other hand, the Breeders' Cup is coming up tough. I think they were thinking, $2 million versus 7 or 8 good horses versus $1 million versus 2 or 3 good horses. We both know Ken Ramsey likes money, and sometimes, like I say, he's one of these guys that he handicaps. He's not just an owner; he handicaps, and so I think he thinks, well, I can beat the Pizza Man, and I can beat El Prado Olay, and I can beat Reporting Star, and at the time he didn't know who from Europe was going to come over, and so it's logically, if you like money, I don't see how you can get Big Blue Kitten not out of the top 5 here. So I think he's going to pick up a check, and so I think if you look at it for those reasons, it's logical. Dynamic Sky I thought was interfered with the last time. It didn't get put up on top. He ran a good race. I do like the fact that the Pizza Man's in here. We both think he went over the top when he delivered at Arlington, but you need a horse like the Pizza Man in here, and I'm really glad Reporting Star came in here, because if you don't get an honest pace, then all bets are off. Like, you just don't know who to play. So at least we get a real pace, and it helps some of the better horses run their race.
Yeah, I mean, even one of the more interesting horses in here, I think, is Pyrite Mountain. He was supposed to run today, originally, I think, over at Keeneland. Scratched out of that, running here instead in Canada. I've since finished second by a head or less 3 times this year. So he's going to be coming at the end. He's going to get the pace set up. It's just a matter of he's good enough, which I guess we'll find out in this race. But, one at potentially longer odds that just has ran really well all year long.
So overall, you feel that the Euro Power is, if you took those 2, that's all you need.
Yeah, the thing that gets misunderstood a lot is we see a lot of these European horses come over, and I don't think people always understand the form, and then, they come here and win, and a lot of times it's horses who, honestly, back home aren't really that good. Brown Panther and Hillstar aren't world beaters by any means, but these are genuine Group 3 listed type horses. Brown Panther did win a Group 1, though it was a little bit of a tactics meltdown that got him to do so. But regardless, he still won by a wide margin. So, these are horses who have won quality races, so it's really tough for me to go against them. Hillstar, I think has been pointing to this spot for a while in particular, so even if I don't like him, I can see why people do.
Yeah, I mean, to me, these are the type of Euros that, I mean, these figure. You got a horse that's 10 for 24, and you got a horse with 3-6-1. I mean, these are horses that you should be playing. I just have a problem when you have some of these Euros come over 1 for 9, running on all-weather track, and they go off at 5-2 and win. Like, that's not handicapping. That's just saying the Euros are better than the Americans, and we already know that. I mean, so at least these horses have form, and they're winners, and they're coming over to win money. Like, this is logical. I don't have a problem. When you see a 1 for 7 horse come over and running on all weather and then running 7 furlongs and then they win at 2 miles in America in a grade 1 at 5-2 odds, it doesn't look right. It just looks a little phony. So, these two horses, Brown Panther didn't opt for the Lasix, Hillstar did. I still think Hillstar is going to win, so we'll see. I think straight up at 1.5 miles, I think Hillstar is a better horse. I just think he's more pointed for this race. And Brown Panther lost to Grander, so we know that Hillstar is going to be good in this race.
Oh man, yeah, that was first up last year when he wasn't. Brown Panther wasn't totally right, for being honest, for that race. But one thing too we can mention that's a little bit different too is Brown Panther has traveled this far before. He ran in the Melbourne Cup last year, finished 8th, but ran really well considering how the pace shaped out in that race. Whereas Hillstar hasn't quite traveled this far before, it's a little bit of an unknown for him. But because these two are higher profile horses, you can find all these races on YouTube and these replays on YouTube, whereas maybe with some of the more obscure Euros, it's a little tougher to find. So I'd recommend just watching these horses, and in particular their race that they ran this year against each other, so to get kind of an idea of what they're about, how they run, and how some of their races run, because both of them have had a few quirky races that, on form maybe look a little bit better than they actually were if you watch the race.
So that's the Canadian International. Of course, there's also the Neartick race, and then there's a couple of Ontario races. So Woodbine on Sunday, Woodbine has had a very strong meet, and with Keeneland not being poly anymore, their poly races have been really competitive. So the card at Woodbine on Sunday, handle's been up for Woodbine during the month of October, and it's way down for Santa Anita and Keeneland and a few other tracks. So there will be some money in the pools, and I do think with the full competitive fields, they do offer some, these two horses, I mean, Brown Panther or Hillstar, they're not going to be 4-5. I mean, they're going to be legitimately 7-5, 8-5, 2-1, and you can bet on horses like that. I just, once they get below even money, it just becomes tough to catch. We're getting closer to the Breeders' Cup. Any other notes from just that's? I know one of the big news for you this week was that a certain horse that starts with the letter T is going to be coming over for the mile.
Yeah, I'm so excited that Tornado's coming over. It's a shame that he won't be able to beat Wise Dan, but at least he's coming over here, and he was the horse who they were planning to bring him over here last year, and after a poor work at home, they ended up opting to bring Olympic Glory instead. So I've been waiting over a year for this guy to finally come over to the U.S. I think he's going to love it here. He will be your favorite in the mile. So Tornado, big news.
And now at the Classic, we've got 16 horses that want to run in the Classic, including horses like Noble Moon, who somehow in 11 months couldn't find a race to run in, but now, boy, that Breeders' Cup Classic just looks tempting.
I'll tell you what, in January, when I said I liked Noble Moon for the Belmont, I didn't think he'd be in the Breeders' Cup Classic, and he was running better then than he is now. So, beats me, but at least we have a full field, even if some of them are filler types.
Yeah, it's just, to me, I like full fields as much as anybody, but, 13 or 14 is a full field, and let's maybe save 3 of these for the Clark or something, but that's the problem, is that now, it seems like we either have a 5-horse field or a 15-horse field. Like, we need more races with 9 or 10 horses, and it just, I don't know, it bugs me a little bit because Noble Moon had all of those workouts. Like, they couldn't run them one time, and it just seems like it's a little, like I don't know, it just seems
And we still don't know if he's wearing bar shoes or not.
Yeah.
We don't know.
So, but other horses, Prayer for Relief is under consideration. The Big Lover, Big Casanova, maybe possibly. Cigar Street wants to run. So if they do get 16 entries, then they're going to have to pick and choose, which, a few of those horses that I think are that people think are going to get in. I mean, Cigar Street, I don't know if there's 16 horses. He hasn't even ran in a Grade 1. I mean, I don't know how the committee can. I mean, maybe they would just because of Mott, but technically they shouldn't. They should be choosing horses that have ran more often and won more money, and so that'll be an interesting decision if 16 horses still try to get in.
I mean, some of these it's nice. I think like a horse like Prayer for Relief, even though we don't see him out there winning races, like he always shows up and he runs his race in top quality races all year long. So a horse like him I don't mind at all versus some of the others seem a little bit sketchy at this level. Like you said, it becomes interesting. Somebody asked on Twitter the other day, like, okay, so after this race, like, who's running in the Clark? And I did a quick Twitter search to, like, see if anybody had said they're running the Clark, and the only horse I could find was Real Solution, which is bizarre and maybe shows a little bit about the potential quality of that race.
So, yeah, but, the Classic is shaping up as a full field. The mile, it looks like maybe 11 or 12 horses. Looks like we got 11 horses for the juvenile, 11 horses for the juvenile fillies. Last year when they didn't have Lasix, some of those fields got kind of light. So to me, the Breeders' Cup, I want 10, 11, 12 horses. I don't necessarily want 14, but I think we're going to see that. Next week we're going to do a kind of a quick preview show talking about some of the factors and just different things we're looking at for. And then the Wednesday before the Breeders' Cup, we're going to do a down and dirty pick segment on about 7 or 8 of the races. So, because everybody's going to be handicapping that week, and we just want to get them in with the picks and right after the post positions and see what we have. So, should be an exciting next couple of weeks, and that's going to do it for another edition of Down to the Wire.